What's up, everybody? It's Jake and Jaimie, and today we're going to school you a little bit more about adult autism. Specifically, we're going to be talking about that age-old question that all autistic people with skills inevitably get asked, which is, are you a savant? But as is tradition, we are going to explain what a savant is. The Merriam-Webster's definition is something along the lines of it's somebody who's affected with autism spectrum disorder that exhibits exceptional skill or brilliance in some limited field. That's a dictionary definition. The actual definition, what you could actually think of it as, is somebody who's an autistic savant is basically a prodigy, like a child prodigy that's affected with autism. So it's kind of like they're a superhero or villain, and their special power is to absorb information at a geometric rate on some particular topic, be it science, technology, engineering, and math, or art, or language. So being a savant, I think a lot of people, there's the stigma of it because in movies like Rain Man or Mozart and the Whale, where somebody's a particular savant, they just have these exceptional skills. But really what it boils down to is it's somebody who has really developed in one area, but is limited in others. And there are famous autistic savants that wasn't the case. The author of the book Born on a Blue Day was a savant that was as highly functioning, as even more so than me. He didn't even seem to be affected by it at all. But essentially what a savant is it's somebody who is brilliant in a particular field or skill set without really needing to dedicate all that much time to that brilliance. So that leads us to who would qualify as a savant? And I actually get asked this question all the time, which is oh, Jake, are you a savant? And the answer to that is no, I'm not a savant. I'm autistic and I have a particular skill set, not Liam Neeson style, but rather in engineering, in technology that is impressive to some. And I guess the reason for that is I was self-taught at the software development and engineering that I do now. I work professionally at that. Before that, I was a self-taught network engineer. I played the guitar reasonably well. I learned to play the piano passably well in a weekend. But the thing of it is it's not that I'm not a savant. I think that's a label that gets thrown on any autistic person who is good at something. And in a way, it's kind of offensive because it feels like a cop-out. Somebody will look at your skill set and be like, oh, it's okay that I don't learn as quickly as they do. They're a savant, so their skills don't count because they have autism. It comes across as condescending, or somebody copping out of wanting to learn something because we are able to learn it quickly. My particular skill set is just simply that I can learn better by teaching myself than learning from others. And I guess my gift isn't really being savant-like. It's once I understand how something works, it's easy for me to piece together how to work with it. For a perfect example, I played the guitar for 10 years, so I understood music reasonably well. A friend of mine sat me down and taught me how to play the piano, and I wasn't even really able to put together how to play the instrument until I learned that the piano has 12 notes on it that repeat in a predictable pattern that you can visibly see from the orientation of the black and the white keys. And once I understood how that pattern repeated and then applied the music experience that I had of 10 years of playing an instrument at a high level, I was able to piece together how to play the instrument. That's not savantism. That's not I gained this skill with some unfair advantage. I had to work at it. I had to really sit down. I couldn't even really play anything until I figured out how the instrument works. The same thing with my career. I have a lot of what I do during the day writing software is kind of staring at the wall, trying to figure out how the particular pieces fit together. Once I put the pieces together, I can type the code in very quickly as if I'm typing an email, and it just runs. And the reason for that is because I understood how to put the pieces together. But that doesn't make me a savant. That makes me somebody that has learned how they learn and works within those limitations. And those two things are very different. I wanted to spell a stigma a little bit here. I can probably tell that you guys sense that I have a little bit of a bone to pick with the savant label. And it's not that I have a bone to pick with the savant label. I think I just get irritated at how widely it is used to define anybody with autism who's good at something. And in a way, it can come across as kind of offensive. It's not the kind of offensive that I get up in arms about or that I get really offended about. It's just one of those things that kind of makes me feel like people think I have an unfair advantage because I struggle with an alternative wiring. And I would not consider autism an unfair advantage at all. I would say I have advantages in some areas of life and huge disadvantages in other areas of life. And the idea of like labeling me or anybody who has autism as a savant just because they're good at something, it kind of diminishes what they've done to gain the skills that everybody thinks are so impressive, right? I think the big part about being somebody with autism is the unique gift that we have far more often than savantism, which honestly is as rare in autistic people as child prodigy level genius is in neurotypicals. It's not common. Savantism is not common, but as you know, many entrepreneurs and famous, CEOs have said that intelligence and genius is not being better at other people that what they do, but rather being good at something that nobody else thought to do. Right? And I think being autistic gives us that way of looking at something that not a lot of people approach. So it seems really impressive, even though we're just taking a different path to the same result. So for instance, one of the things that I'm really good at as an autistic person, and one of the things that a lot of my autistic friends and people I've met are really good at, is we're great at the process of learning, which is just slogging through the boring stuff before your new skill gets interesting, and just taking that in and processing it, not like glazing over it or skipping it, but we're really good at the menial, mundane, tedious stuff that you need to do to learn something to a point where you understand it, and then you can learn geometrically and master something very quickly. I think what's difficult for a lot of folks is they get bored. Like the tedious, boring stuff is just that. It's boring. And what we as people with autism a lot of times can do, and this isn't exclusive, but a lot of times we can slog through that boring stuff because there's pattern to it that makes it interesting to us, because we look at it from a different angle. That doesn't mean the autistic way is better. That doesn't mean the neurotypical way is wrong. But what it does mean is that we have a different approach that allows us to hammer at problems differently. And that doesn't make one a savant. A savant is someone who is truly gifted, like off the wall gifted in their particular field. However, a lot of times what that savantism ends up being is a spot on Ellen and Good Morning America for the parlor trick that you did on the internet, and then you ultimately go by the wayside. And I guess the reason for that is people love a sideshow, right? They love the person that can count a 300 shoot deck of cards. They love the people that can do trigonometry and calculus in their head when they're 6 years old. Like, they love that. But just like being a great software engineer and a great musician is a lot more than just being able to code well or being able to play your instrument. Being someone with autism is learning our skills. It's a lot more than just like supernatural ability to do so. Not that I'm knocking people who have savantism as sideshow attractions, because they're absolutely not. The problem is they get treated that way, ultimately because they're so developed in one area. And the problem is the other areas that make you successful at a particular skill, like a software developer. Let's take that. Let's take my job as a software engineer. I'm a good coder. I'm also a relatively good people person. I'm a good problem solver, and I have the ability to see how pieces fit together. And most importantly, to step back from hotness technologies and hype and really apply what's important rather than just what's cool. And I think if somebody with savantism got into my position, I think they'd have a really hard time at it. Because yeah, they could write super hyper efficient algorithms. They could do data structures that were absolutely fantastic. They could totally rework our entire database to make it like 10 times more performant and a lot more cost effective. The problem is when they try to take a step back and look how it meets the business needs, how it's going to make things either way more difficult for operations, or how it's going to fit into the rest of the business model, or the time that it's going to take, or the technology stack that we need to use. How reusable is it? How maintainable is it? These things don't get considered because their development in one area has left them with deficiencies in others, just like anybody. So savantism can be an excellent gift. It can be wonderful, but can also, if not managed properly, it can make you little more than a sideshow attraction. So don't be so quick to label somebody as a savant just because they're good at something. And if you meet someone who's a savant, don't treat them like a circus attraction or some sort of like lovely freak that can do fun things and they've never seen a saxophone before, but they can play Coltrane just by hearing a busker do it in a train station. Like that's impressive, but don't treat them like a sideshow attraction. So I guess the key question is like, are you a savant? And my answer is doesn't matter. Like, does it? Think about it. Do you need to have that savant label to feel good about yourself? Because I fully 100% believe that you don't. I think that child prodigy, autistic savant, for autistic adults, I think we're so empowered. Like, don't belittle your gifts, your ability to approach things differently, your ability to work just as hard, if not harder than a neurotypical, to gain the same skill set, but you do it in a different way. Like, don't belittle what you've done. Don't minimize what you've done by letting someone give you the savant label. And while it is an honor for somebody to think you're a savant, think you're that skilled, that's really cool. To all of the neurotypicals or somebody who have an autistic person in their life, maybe they feel differently than I do. That's totally possible. But don't go throwing around the savant label, because we work so hard. We do, guys. We autistic brothers and sisters out there, we work so hard to get our skills, to get to a place where we can be functional, and we have to work against so much with anxiety and things like that. We deserve to really feel good about the fact that we have earned our skill set, that we have worked really hard, and that we have gifts that allow us to master certain things in a different way than others. But don't minimize it by making yourself out like you have some unfair advantage over your contemporaries because of your savantism, because that's not the case. And even if it is, if you are an autistic savant, that's a huge gift. And I really appreciate what you have to go through on a daily basis, because that must be really, really difficult to have that kind of a gift, but also to be burdened with that kind of a gift. So for those of us in the autistic community, whether you're young, whether you're old, whether you're an adult, I absolutely love you. We absolutely love you. And we really want you to succeed. We want you to feel good about the fact that you guys are killing it out there. You're doing so great. If you've made it to autistic adulthood and you've like aged out of the system to the point where most medical communities like don't care anymore because you're not an autistic child, you are so strong and powerful, and you're working so hard, a lot of times so much harder than your contemporaries. So just keep going, keep crushing it, and don't make yourself out like you've got an unfair advantage of savantism. You're brilliant, you're powerful in such a unique and wonderful way, but that doesn't mean that you didn't earn it. So guys, stick with us, stick with me. We love you. Whether you're new here, whether you've already subscribed, whether you just stumbled across us, please stick around. We have a lot of fun here, and we talk about what it's like to be an autistic adult, because to be honest, not many people seem to want to. Not many communities seem to want to acknowledge that we just aren't cured of it by the time we turn 18. So stick around here. Let's make a community. Let's huddle together, but not touch, because that's a thing. And we'll just absolutely make sure that we're here to comfort each other and show each other the way through autistic adult life. So this is Jake and Jaimie signing off. You're not a savant, but you're so much more and so much better. So we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.